Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's session with us here at HR Mentorship. And we are going to be learning a very important subject. The title for today's consideration is HR and Corporate Culture Development, Human Resources and Corporate Culture Development. Today, we have a very prolific speaker, Kelvin Ogilaya, and I'll be introducing him very briefly so that we can get to know him better. I'm sure some of us already know him. All right. So Kelvin is currently the Chief Operating Officer of PHR Solutions Limited. Prior to now, he worked with Canadian Consulting Limited for a period of well over 5 years, and he held various roles ranging from Senior HR Business Partner to Team Lead HR Project and Head HR Advisory and Consulting Services. Before then, he spent well over 2 years with Philip Outsourcing, where he also held multiple roles from HR consultant, recruitment, selection and placement, and HR business partner, compensation, benefits management, and payroll administration. He also worked with Tech24 as a learning and development coordinator. He is SPHR International Certified, in other words, Senior Professional in Human Resources International. He is also a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria, and he has a master's in industrial and labor relations. It's our rare privilege and honor to have someone of his caliber to share with us willfully, graciously today. I encourage us to please pay attention as it comes on board. Let's also reach out to any of our colleagues who should definitely be on this call. This session is extremely important. I'll hand over control to Kelvin. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yemi. Thank you for this privilege and opportunity to share knowledge. And yeah, thank you for our time, you know, driving us to learn. That's how I put it. To all my colleagues and fellow practitioners that are here. Okay, so today, like Dr. Yemi mentioned, we're going to have a very interesting session today. It's something that we live with, it's something that we feel, it's something that we see. So today's session our conversation is going to center around HR and corporate culture development. Our table of content for today, our conversation is actually going to be around this table of content. We're going to look at overview of human resource management, important competencies required for HR leaders and emerging leaders. We also look at culture as it were. Then we discuss we also concentrate a lot more on corporate culture, then discuss elements of culture, types of culture, companies with good or positive cultural examples. Then we look at benefits of positive culture, then corporate culture and strategy, which is actually going to be an area of interest to everybody. Then we discuss how HR can also influence corporate culture. Then we also share one or two key takeaways, and then we discuss, then we also have opportunity to answer questions as well. Before we continue, I actually like this session to be very interactive, and I like you to be very much involved. So I like you to, if you can type your company core values, I will appreciate it. Can you share? You don't need to mention the name of your company. Just on the comment section, just put your company core values. You may actually not get all of them correctly, but just share your company core values. Because we're going to discuss values, we're going to discuss norms, we're going to discuss routines. Can somebody put something, company core values? Are people there? Can somebody hear me? Just type something, company core, just type your current company core values. I know that there are one or two persons that may be in between jobs. Some are business owners, and then some are also leaders in organizations in HR. Okay, let me see. Okay, Greatness 80 says, professionalism. Charles said continuous improvement and customer-centered. Okay, who is there again? Professionalism, continuous improvement, and customer-centered. Okay, somebody says, because it says accountability, somebody said integrity, bold, customer focus. Okay, beautiful. Someone said equity. Maureen Victoria said equity. Okay, beautiful. All of this, I just want us to be on the same page, right? All of these are very valid. All of these connotes our different core values in our various workplaces or organizations. Because today's topic is HR and corporate culture development. So we are not just going to deep dive into corporate culture alone without discussing a little about human resource management. When people hear human resource, HR, what comes to people's mind? Even before you join HR as a person, as an HR officer or as an HR director right now, what comes to mind when people hear HR, right? HR is actually, I remember those days when we're much younger. As a Delta boy, most of us really wanted to work in oil and gas. You know, an average Delta boy used to be an engineer with an oil and gas firm. And anytime Shell or some of the oil and gas, some of the international IOCs, any of the IOCs visit schools, you know, for scholarship programs, and so everybody admired, you know, oil and gas, the way they were looking and the rest of them. So it was later one day somebody said it's HR people that put people in organizations. I was like, oh, really? It's HR? Wow. So different things come to people's mind when we talk about HR, all right? But HR really is concerned with effectively managing the people within an organization. Effectively managing the people within an organization. You can liken an organization to an individual. Organization has a goal. Organization has a dream, right? Organization has aspirations. Organization has corporate, what we call strategy. It has objectives. So in liking an organization to an individual wants to live large. An individual wants to be rich. An individual wants to have a global reputation. An individual wants to be influential. All right. So if you also take it back, organization want to have large market share. Organization want to be globally reputed. Want to enjoy global reputation. So all of these are the things that organization stands for. All right. But then, in as much as organization, like a human being, is aspiring to go as much as he wants to go, all the dreams of the organization, they are very valid. Okay, all the dreams of the organization, they are very valid. Their aspirations are very valid and very energetic, very focused on all of those strategies, all of those, you know. But at the same time, all of this vision, the mission, the strategy, the objective, they cannot be achieved without people within the organization. All right. So for organization to get market share, large market share, organizations to aspire to achieve all of its aspirations, there are a lot of things that are involved. Organization need to be able to get the capacity to achieve what he wants to achieve. Organization need to be able to fundamentally well positioned to be able to achieve all of that. So that is where HR comes in. While the organization is struggling to achieve all of that, organization the other way around, to the people that are meant to bring all of these things, all of these accomplishments into reality, while they are working together, there will be some level of cross-functional collaborations. There will be some level of getting to learn what they do not know to enable them achieve what they can achieve, what they want to achieve. You know, so all of these are connected to HR. Cross-functional collaborations, employee motivation, all of these are the things that HR drives. All right. So HR is very fundamental to the organization. And before now, HR was just seen as, okay, it was just seen as a secondary support function department, you know, that can help with some related things like equipment, you know, and so many other things. But within the last 20 years, attention has actually been changing around HR. Now, if you look at it, serious attention have been changing around HR. So now they're not beginning to see HR as not just a cost department or secondary function department, but a department or a function that is required to be able to achieve all of those dreams, all of those aspirations, all of those corporate objectives that we earlier mentioned. If you also look at it now, for those of us in consulting space, if you work on some HR transformation projects, you now see at RED that organizations are now also beginning to change the narrative from changing the names or the nomenclatures of those HR personnel roles to things like chief people officer. Before, what it was admin manager and the rest of it. But now you now have not just head of HR, you now have chief people officer. So people are now beginning to, in fact, a time will come where you will no longer be hearing too much of HR. You just enter it and say, okay, this is people transformation department. This is people manager. This is people officer. This is this, this is this, this is this. So all of that is because of the weight and the relevance that managing people within the workplace is beginning to gain. Okay, so that is why HR, the trend is, the narrative will continue to change and the trend will continue to get improved and the relevance of HR will continue to increase. All right, so because all this while, now people have now come to the understanding that, okay, human resources is not like just any other resource or resources that can just be exploited. But human resource is a vital part or an integral part of the organization. And for the organization to achieve all of this, it needs a core strategic HR. Okay. So the function of HR cuts across a lot of the things that we know, which is recruitment, employee motivation, performance management, and all of that, right? So this is the administrative part where I said that there's now a transition from the administrative function to now a more strategic human resource management. Now, like I mentioned, it's going to come where everybody will say people manager, people officer, people this, people this, people this, because of that sense of belonging, where people are now saying that it's no longer just put the human in HR. It's not just making it a sentence as it were. All right. Okay. So for HR to be, because a lot of us are HR people, so for HR to as well be able to live up to this expectation, HR leaders and emerging HR leaders need to be able to have global intelligence. That is one of the key competencies now in this 21st century that is required for HR to succeed in that role. Global intelligence is simple. It's just talking about you understanding the need of the people and responding to the need of the people across different boundaries, as long as wherever there's life, that there's work there, right? So that is global intelligence. Then we're also going to discuss a lot more on cross-cultural intelligence, which is also going to be like a major part of this conversation. So the place also for effective communication is also a skill that every HR that wants to succeed in 21st century or that want to be reckoned with must be able to possess. Then another one is strategic thinking. You agree with me that not just HR alone, but because we are discussing HR, so we may concentrate our conversation around HR. It's the incumbent of a job that determines its relevance. How do I mean? The job position alone does not determine the relevance of a job, but the incumbent. That is why you see that. I've had a situation of heads or been to places where management or leadership says, if this person was there, that thing would not have happened. All right? Or even people begin to complain of being sidelined, or people begin to complain of not being involved or carried along. Is the kind of incumbent that is sitting on that job that will make your relevance, not just the job position. So that is why strategic thinking is important. If an organization is thinking about gaining market share, and then they know that you are strategic in your approaches, they will involve you in every decision that they will take. And that is the relevance that is required now for every HR practitioner. Another one is HR knowledge. All of us do interviews at one time or the other, right? We conduct interviews. And when you are part of the things where people come for interviews or the kind of things that you require, the incumbent or prospective incumbent coming for an interview, a candidate coming for an interview, for instance, should be able to have knowledge of the role and also be able to possess qualities that will help that individual to succeed on that role. And then outside all of those ones, there's another part where we say, okay, do you have knowledge of what the business does? Do you know what the business is into? Then you proceed from that to say, okay, if you have knowledge of what the business is into, do you have knowledge of the industry? So for instance, if we say we want to be leaders of the industry, will you be able to drive us, okay, to be the leader of the industry? Because if you don't understand the industry, you don't understand competition. So how would you be able to drive us? Right. So that is why knowledge is very critical for every HR leader or emerging HR leader. And thank God we are in the age of information. As we are here now, people are in their different locations and comfortably, everybody, we're interacting. Right. So that is the place for knowledge. Okay. So let's discuss one of the main conversations, one of the main topics that we're going to have, which is culture. A lot of people have different perspectives. A lot of people define culture in different ways, all right? But at the same time, we can see some of the aspects of culture in what we do. So culture here refers to a system of shared values and beliefs, which influences the way of life of a group of people. In social studies, we learn that culture is a people's way of life. So your way of life is the way you believe, which is based on certain things, your belief system, all right, your value, okay, your norms, part of those things that review culture. Now, talking about corporate culture, you can define corporate culture in different ways. But for me, right, I would say that corporate culture is the impression that employees or every stakeholder of the organization have about that organization, from the process of joining the organization to working with the organization, to even when the person even leave the organization, even after that, transacting business with the organization. All of that impression is the make up the culture of that. Whatever we know is the, yes, like we have here, is the belief, set of belief, attitude, values, behaviors that characterize the way companies, employees interact with each other and all of that. So, which is true. The culture also determines how employees relate with one another. Culture also determines how employees relate with management. Culture determines how employees relate with customers or with other stakeholders or even shareholders or with the public. So culture is your identity. Culture is employer brand. Culture is you, right? So your corporate culture is your identity. That's your employer brand. That's what people know about you. And corporate culture is also performance. If you have been to meetings, for instance, where people say, no, send it to that vendor or send it to those people, they will respond fast. They are talking about performance. They're talking about performance. They're talking about culture. Send it to them, they will respond fast. Don't send it to them, but they will not respond till next tomorrow. That is that. So they are saying that people, they are laid back, and that is their culture. Right. So culture is the writing core values and pasting on the wall or just putting up everything that you need to post. No, culture is how people behave in the organ, and it can easily be formed. All right. So we're going to discuss a lot more. Okay. Yes, we see this already. So how are culture reviewed? Please, am I being heard? Hello, sir. Dr. Emi? Okay, thank you. Okay, so how are culture reviewed? All right, so when we say your values, right, we're talking about principles and standards. But let's not even leave those English. When we talk about values, I talk company stands for is the value of the organization. That's why you have some values such as you hear things like customer focus. People also share their value here. Somebody mentioned equity, somebody mentioned integrity. So those are how culture is reviewed. All right. But the essence a thing or two. And I'm also open to learning a thing or two from everyone, right? But the essence of today is, because they said that learning occurs when there's. So the essence of today is actually so that by the time we return back, a lot of things, we're able to come up with a whole lot of things by virtue of whatever a thing or two that we're going to learn from here, right? So what we stand for as an organization is our value. What are those things that we attach so much importance to? Those principles, those standards, those qualities that we attach so much importance to, those are our values as a people, those are our values as an organization, all right? You know, so we also talk about norms. It's also reviewed also via norms, all right? Via norms, okay? So when we say norm, we are talking about what is commonly practiced in the organization. Norm also now talk about how do you want those values to be converted into action. Translating value into action or making it more real is now what talks about norm. And those translations can be seen in your methods of operations, in your the way you do things, your responses. All right. So all of that is those are the what is commonly practiced. They will not respond now, or send to them, they will respond quickly. So now what is commonly practiced, all right? Fast response, for instance, is what is commonly practiced. So that's a norm for that organization. That is what is going to be known for. All right. So it's also reviewed. Corporate culture is also reviewed via routine. So routine actually is repeatable standard that drive home your corporate culture. What are those things that you do over and over again? All right. Consistency, things that are commonly practiced within the organization. So those are the routines right now. You know, so every organization has a culture, and I'd like you to log this in, but not every organization has a defined culture. Every organization has a culture, but not every organization has a defined culture. And the truth is this. The truth is this, right? Organization culture will form, okay? Whether you are intentional about building a strong culture or you are not intentional about building a strong culture, a weak culture will develop over time. Because at the end of the day, if for a very strong and well-established organization, right, we're going to discuss all of that. But for organization, for instance, that is not very strong in culture, it will be the cultural practice in that organization. Two things will involve. Either it takes the traits of the founder, or it takes the traits of individual people, the traits of individuals within the organization. That is what will form the culture at the end of the day. All right. So, but like we said, every organization has a culture, but not every organization has a defined culture. So HR too, as well, our conversation will also see how HR can influence culture as we move ahead. All right. I decided to share Edgar Schein's model of culture, the 3 levels of culture, where he classified into 3 levels. He mentioned artifacts, he mentioned espoused values, and he also mentioned assumptions and beliefs. Okay, so artifacts are just those basic characteristics of the organization that you can see, you can feel them, you can smell them. You come to an office, for instance, office setup, the furnitures, all right, those visible structures, the business processes, you know, so those are the artifacts, the dress code, the work hours, the rights, the rituals, those are the artifacts. Then you now come to espoused values. Espoused values are, yeah, they reflect in the organization strategies, they reflect in their goals, they reflect in their vision, they reflect on how values are communicated, they reflect on how stakeholders are carried along and how strategy align with culture and all of that. Those are espoused values. Then we'll talk about assumption and beliefs. According to Edgar, he said these are things that they are hidden, okay? These assumptions I believe are hidden. They are unconscious beliefs, thoughts and feelings. All right, there are unwritten rules on how organizations behave, okay? So how decisions are made, how conflicts are being managed, or how conflicts are being resolved. So these are levels of culture, all right, according to Edgar. Now, look at how culture extends. How does corporate culture extend? There was a time where a particular bank manager, no, a former MD of one of the tier 1 banks, he walked into a department and everybody started adjusting. And he said, why are people adjusting when the HOD is around? Like, why would people be adjusting when they see him? And the HOD has been around and they were not adjusting. So that means something is wrong. And the HOD was sanctioned. Okay. Jimovi also shared something about a very important thing when he started Zenith Bank. He said, for a period of 2 years when they started the bank, that time it was on the mainland, but they got the space for Zenith in VI. And according to him, they had meeting every day. Every blessed day they had meeting. The leadership had meeting every blessed day. And for a space of 2 years, nobody came late to the meeting because he was there by 7 a.m. every day of the meeting. Okay, so because organizational culture, how does it extend actually? You notice that for large organizations, except from the issue of national culture now, we're talking about corporate culture. That, okay, what is practicable at the headquarter branch is different from what is happening other branch. So where they talk about localization. But let's even bring it home. You notice that some organizations, people can complain of toxic work environment in team A or team B, but team C is not complaining of toxic work environment. The manager and their team lead is different. The kind of vibe that the team lead brings and the kind of vibe that team members bring is very different from the kind of vibe that other members of the organization bring. All right. So where this alignment is where HR is required. All right. Because actually, culture sits with leadership, or HR drives it. All right. So that the experience among teams and departments can be cohesive. That is where our role as HR people is needed. Leadership have said, we want to do X, right? This is how we behave here. This is very important to us. And some team leads even have a way of, covering some poor performances, covering some toxic behaviors, because of 1 or 2 interests. At the end of the day, it will blow open, and the same thing that the person was hiding will now lead to major cultural issues within the system. So this is where HR will be required to support leadership in driving the culture. Okay. I mentioned strong corporate culture. When an organization is starting newly, or the organization has been existing, it is important that the organization or people who want to drive culture understand the current place of the organization in culture. All right. So now there are 4 quadrants, which is very popular: the clan culture, the adocracy, hierarchy, and market. These are 4 types, very popular types of corporate culture. Now, the clan is talking about family-friendly culture, where there's value cohesion, where there's participation, where there's communication and a personal place, like a family, all right, where people mentor people, where there's nurturing, tight social network and all of that. So everybody have this kind of relaxed mindset, no aggression, just doing my work, smiling and moving ahead. We are progressing, family-friendly culture. This is one type of culture. All of them have their advantages and their disadvantages. There is not a one size fits all approach or template for culture. But when you understand where you are as a culture, you can then also look at what you are pursuing in terms of strategy, in terms of goal. You can then align that your goal to the strategy. That's your strategy, to the culture that you think that will fit best to drive home or bring accomplishment. All right. So that is for clan culture. Now, if you look at it, you see that client culture is internally focused and there's some level of integration, all right? And it's also flexible, right? Now, we have adhocracy. Adhocracy is just like an ad hoc. So it's dynamic, it's entrepreneurial. People there, they are free to make decisions. There's a whole lot of creativity in adhocracy. There's a lot of innovation. People adapt, so people are given opportunity. There's autonomy. There's job autonomy. People are given opportunities to learn. People are given opportunities to try new things. People are even given opportunity to make mistakes. People are given opportunity to discover, all right? Like Facebook, for instance, okay? Like Facebook, for instance, now, that's the kind of culture that they have. You are given opportunity to try new things. If I develop something we don't know, come up, solve a problem. Or like, so that's adhocracy, right? It has its advantages too and disadvantages. And we're also going to look at it according to different categories and style in our next slide. So then we have hierarchy culture. Hierarchy culture is old-fashioned culture, traditional, favors so much structure, coordinated efficiency, stability. There's a whole lot. Sometimes a disconnection between employees and management. When you want to come, you have to follow due process on all of these, smooth processes like that. That is hierarchy. So that's it. So it's also internally focused, all right? But there's no much control for the people. Not control. Now there's control from the top, but there's no much autonomy for individual employees. So that is for hierarchy, right? It's also stable, okay? And also internally focused. So, but we look at market culture. Market culture is aggressive. Market culture says, get it done any how you want it. Market culture, however you want to get this done. This is our strategy. We want to attain social market share. We want by so and so we should open branches in different countries or open. This is, if a salesperson, for instance, is sales driven. All right, it's result oriented. It's about results. They want to beat competition by all means. They want to get a customer by all means. All right, they want to get customers by all means. They can come into a state, what is happening there, they bribe everybody, so that is aggressive, is Machiavellian in nature. That is market culture. It's externally focused. They come with a lot of differentiations. All right, but one of the major disadvantages here is that sometimes it can result to conflict in between colleagues, in between co-workers, in between employees. All right, so it's for us to understand where we operate as an organization, whether your own business or where you work as an organization, for us to understand where we operate so that we'll be able to model something, we'll be able to model the kind of culture that will take us to where we need to be. All right, so if you look at the categories and style, leadership style for clown is mentoring, is facilitating, is nurturing. All right. So leadership style for adhocracy is entrepreneurial, innovation. They encourage risk-taking. Your mind, so yeah, try it out. If you make a mistake, you will not die. Try it out. All right. But leadership style for market share is no nonsense, aggressive, result, however you want to go and just go and get it. They can even be verbal abuse in market culture. They are just focused on results. That's one of their key. So you look at hierarchy, for instance. Hierarchy is coordinating, organizing. They may not be that harsh in terms of results, but they are very process-driven. This is how we do it. Don't come, you Gen Z, to come and say, no, my friend, sit down. This is how we do it. That's hierarchy. The management of employees for clan culture is teamwork. There's a lot of family friendliness, a lot of participation, a lot of working together, a lot of consensus. There's a lot of agreeableness, all right, in the clan culture. But when you come to adhocracy, there's some level of individual trying things out on their own. There's a level of autonomy, some level of innovation, freedom, uniqueness, just come with your unique value. All right. So but in market share for management of employees, the strategy is competitiveness and achievement. Competition, everybody wants to get each other. People can even be working against each other because of results in market share, in market culture. Then if you also look at hierarchy is a bit more stable. Management of employees is a bit more stable. There's security, there's job security, there's conformity. You can predict certain outcomes, right? Then in dominant organizational characteristics, some of the dominant organizational features, clan is personal, it's family friendly, like a family is personal. But adocracy is entrepreneurial, like we mentioned before, and risk-taking. Then if you also look at market, it's competitive, achievement-oriented, like we mentioned before. Organizational practice as well for hierarchy is control, structure, this is how we do it, process-driven, and the rest of them. Therefore, strategic emphasis, family or clan culture is human development. They are also interested in your development. They're interested in your well-being. There's a high level of trust and openness, because there's competition is not that much in between employees, right? So for strategic emphasis for adocracy, you have acquisition of resources, creating new challenges, all right? You want to try out new things. Those are their strategic emphasis. Those are the things that, that is of great value to them. Then for market culture, it's competitive actions, winning, all right? Winning, planning, strategy, making things to, is more competition, is more competitive. Then strategic emphasis for the style for hierarchy is permanence and stability. Then we'll come to organizational glue. There's loyalty and trust in clan culture. Right. In adocracy, there's some level of commitment to innovation and development. For market culture, you have emphasis on achievement of goals and accomplishment. Don't forget that market culture is about goal, it's about breaking the boundary. It's about, making mistakes. It's about trying out new things. So for organizational glue for hierarchy, formal rules, policies, is policy driven. It's a very formal and structured environment. Then what determines success? What do they see as success, all right, for each of these cultures? For clan or family culture, development of human resources, teamwork, concern for people, there's care, there's love. If I'm permitted to use that word, there's care, there's, for clan culture. So if somebody that's been in a clan culture come to a market cultural environment, he's going to say a lot of people are too aggressive. It's just like somebody staying in Kano, who is so used to, very calm environment, and comes to Lagos and somebody is trying to drive, you are driving in Lagos and trying to, what's up now, we're fighting, but that's where this person is coming from. The person coming from clan culture has things very personal to them. Development of human resources, their interest, they put each other's interests at heart. There's some level of teamwork. So even their reward system will also be designed in a way that it will reward and encourage teamwork. All right. For adocracy, there's some kind of unique new products and services. That's when they say have succeeded. That's when they say have succeeded. For market culture, criteria for success for them is winning the marketplace. I'm not interested whether you are insulting me or you don't insult me. Get this thing done at facing competition, even within colleagues. So that is market culture. For hierarchy, there's some level of dependability. There's some level of dependency. Is dependable, is efficient, is of also low cost. Right. Now, we say that management is equal to culture. In one of our interactions on this mentoring group, for some of us that belong to, majority of us that belong to mentoring WhatsApp platform, there was a time where somebody mentioned that a CEO was slapped. And it started a lot of conversations. People now started talking a whole lot about culture, what is happening there, etc., etc. All right. And there was something that Yemi Fashion said. Also I've forgotten, but because I read a lot of those charts and I put them to memory. And he said that culture is what leadership allows, what leadership rewards, and what leadership look away from. Now, we're going to discuss how culture is expressed in organizations. Management is equal to culture. Coming from where we are, if that's why we're going to discuss the role of HR as well, Okay? If employees are managed well, they will have a positive perception of the company and most likely commit to the organization's culture, starting from recruitment and selection. So our recruitment and selection processes is very important. Don't forget that I said that culture is the kind of impression that people have about you, which is also your employer brand. The kind of people you also attract, kind of people that want to work with you, they're also part of the things that embodies your culture, right? So for recruitment and selection, HR, this is what HR coordinates and owns. HR may not be the hiring manager in terms of, so he's not the one responsible for hiring, but he's the one coordinating the whole process. So this is where HR needs to take it very personal to himself from the place of people perceive the way organization is from a candidate level experience before they become employee. So from recruitment and selection, organizations needs to be intentional. It's not just because one manager says, one manager in one of the factories or one manager in one of the plants says, we need somebody so fast. Therefore, you just want to conclude this process within a very short time, and you don't care about organization. Write down your organizational culture and behavioral expectations from every candidate and ask them behavioral questions. If they are not cultural fit, let them go. Somebody said that we hire competence and we fire for behavioral fault, because at the end of the day, it's the behavior of the organization that embodies the culture. That is the culture that people talk about outside. So recruitment and selection, how organizations recruit, do their recruitment, also form parts of perceptions about the organization. Working hours is also how culture is expressed. All right. There are some organizations that we're going to look in the course of this 2-hour session. And you're also going to look at how they are working, how they've been able to adopt their working hours to suit the current realities, or to suit every topography across, most especially the Gen Zs, all right, and everybody that is aspiring to join the world of work, right? So your dress code as well. There are some people, I remember somebody, one of the top guys, the new guy now that is chief executive of one of the big fours. You can mention his name, some of us will know. He said one of the things that attracted him to even work as an accountant is because his uncle was an accountant and his uncle was always well dressed. All right. So your dress code is also what determines, is part of how your culture is expressed. Dress code does not mean the suit and tie. Things are changing. All right. That will be a topic for another day. But then your dress code reflects the kind of culture that you have. Then we'll look at compensation and benefits. We're going to be discussing some mind-blowing perks that some organizations are giving to their staff so that we can have understanding that this compensation and benefit thing, people may not be asking for too much. People actually deserve them. So your compensation and benefit, if you are the kind of organization that your leadership, say for instance, your MD has 100 million naira annual vacation allowance. And the people that are working with you, or maybe there's a telecom company. You work with a telecom company, and your MD has some bogus amount of money for vacations and all of that. Meanwhile, your riggers that are climbing all the towers, making sure that networks are good, or the field engineers, they are paying them change of 80,000, 70,000. That also talks about how your culture is. Healthcare. Because of the kind of business we do, consulting, recruitment, outsourcing, and all of that, we have opportunity, we feel a lot, we have very good clue of a lot of organizations and how their culture is, all right? A lot of organizations. There was a particular commercial bank. They refused to approve HMO they only have HMO plan for organizations, for employees of the organization, not family cover. So if a man, for instance, is working in the organization, it's only the man that is covered. The family is not covered. For contract staff. And then something happened where one of the staff, his wife needed to put to bed through CS. And the guy was an operations staff. He stole money to save the wife, because according to them, the recommendation says that the wife has to, if not, it will be dangerous if you try to put to bed normally. All right. So he quickly put that money. And when they called for missing money and fraud investigation started, he did not even lie about it. He just owned up and said, this is the situation, that he took the money and he used the money to save the wife. That if not for the money, the wife's life would have been in danger. You know that from that time, management had to sit and approve medical care for every staff, whether you're a security man, whether you're a cleaner, whatever you are, as long as you are working within their facilities. Everybody now have a family plan for those that are married, and for those that are not married, they have their individual plan. So do you have to wait for emergency before you do certain things? At the end of the day, the young man was sacked, but then the millions, the money that he stole has gone. All right. So childcare. Just recently, I noticed that, or I saw on LinkedIn that Meta has built a place in their office for nursing mothers. You know, somebody was celebrating it and a lot of people were talking about it. That when nursing mothers come, they now have a mother's room only for nursing mothers. So those are part of the things that reflects or reviews our culture. That's how organizational culture is expressed. Employee welfare as well. We cannot overstate employee welfare, especially in this current time where inflation rate is high for Africans and even across the world. Safety. Now, organization cannot be putting a lot of write-ups talking about safety when, in the real sense of it, they don't prioritize the safety of their staff. In my HR career, I've negotiated with kidnappers twice for release of staff, okay? Certain things organizations take for granted because of cost saving. All of these things are how the organizational culture is expressed, whether people would want to work with you tomorrow or they don't want to work with you. So prioritizing employee safety is also a way that organizational culture is expressed. Learning and development. There was a question in one of the a mentoring WhatsApp group. Somebody asked a question that for a manager, somebody asked a question that a manager, everybody within the team, they are complaining that the manager hoards knowledge. He doesn't share. A lot of things he knows, if he should lead the organization to, he would go with those kind of things. He will go with what he knows. And meanwhile, organization employed you, right? Organization employed you to pay you salaries with other benefits in line with your contract terms with the organization, to bring in your best into the organization. If you're a manager, part of your role is leadership, right? So what organizations can do, encourage organizational learning, is putting up certain strategies that will encourage it. So for instance, if a manager has refused to share knowledge, or you notice that this person, why is this person not willing to share knowledge? You could come up with things like having a way to reward everybody in that grade level. The person noticed that this is the second time people are being rewarded for this particular issue, and I'm not being rewarded. This is the second time that people are being rewarded. Sorry. This is the second time that people are being rewarded. The person will also be able to change his ways. Then communicative behavior. Organizations, if you look at a lot of tech startups, not too many of them have work experiences. All right. So not too many of them have been trained in corporate communication. I'm going to mention Bento because it went viral. Everybody, you can see them on Twitter. At some point, Bento went viral. One of the tech startups in Nigeria here. The co-founder and CEO was emotionally and verbally abusing people and the rest of them. You know, he was using derogatory statements on people, talking to people anyhow, you know. But when I took time to read the story, and when I read the story, I discovered that it's not as if that this guy really is wicked or is not cultured per se. He just feel that the way he behaves, for instance, according to some of the reports, that he can just wake up 11, he can send you a mail by 10 p.m. and ask you to submit before next morning. So when he was being questioned, when he was sharing his own part, he said that is how it was, that the whole of his life is work. So he doesn't understand when somebody says, I cannot attend to this, because they've already put up like a pleasant work environment. So that anybody give him an assignment to buy, can he deliver? All right. So, but then it was an issue for a lot of employees. This is where HR also need to be able to communicate, to teach leadership, tutor leadership politely, all right, on how to communicate and how to curb this kind of behaviors. I've sat with a tech startup CEO that we're discussing in a meeting, and he was using the F word. I'm like, no, but this is a company, really, right? So all of these parameters, all of these are ways that cultures are expressed. Office setup, turnover rates. If you are looking for a job or you are an HR of an organization with your level of turnover, even though we know that there's Japanese now, you know, but with the level of turnover, you'll be able to know whether your culture is positive or your culture is weak, or your culture is on the negative side. Your hiring decisions, those are reflections of your culture. How clients and customers are treated. Your response time. Some people don't respond to emails. I've seen CEOs that don't respond to emails. You send them emails. Those are behaviors that they've built over time. You know, you send them emails, they don't respond. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, they don't respond. All right. Appreciations of commitment and performance, engagement with stakeholders, willingness to take risks, feedback processes, and other aspects of business operations. All of these are reflections of expressions of corporate culture. We cannot just finish it. So but we're going to look at some companies and why a lot of people talk so much about culture. And then we're going to start with Google, for instance. Now, if you look at Google PEC, their PEC and benefit plan, all right, let's look at Google. You see that Google is well known for its employee-friendly corporate culture. So their culture is employee-friendly, all right? Especially defines itself as an unconventional and offers specs such as telecommuting. So even before COVID-19, even before telecommuting became very popular, a lot of organizations have adopted it. Google has been practicing it over time. Flex time, work wherever you are, tuition reimbursement, free employee lunches, and on-site doctors. All right. So you're working and there's a hospital beside you. The built-in hospital is not first aid. This is not first aid. These are on-site doctors. In its corporate headquarters, according to the research, the company offers site services such as oil changes. So, for instance, if your car has issues, you're coming from the mainland, you're coming to Lagos or wherever you are, you know. So all of those car washes, massages, fitness classes, hairstylists, you know. So those are a lot of the things that make up their culture. And all of these specs make them to be among the best companies to work with. But we're going to discuss Netflix. Netflix says they put their people for their process because they understand that it is their people that is required to drive the process. So that, for instance, if you look at Netflix corporate strategy, they say they want to entertain the world, the entire world. They want to entertain the world. So organizations say, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. From where organization is like a human being, or can be likened to a human being who says, I want to be influential, I want to be rich, I want to have global reputation. All of those big dreams is what is, you know, organization can come to say, I want to have so market share, I want to be in so industry, I want to be in so continent, like that, have a lot of those big dreams. But Organizations cannot achieve all of that without the right. So Netflix say we want to entertain the world. And in that say, okay, for us to entertain the world, we first of all need to have our people rightly placed and put the best culture for the people. And put the best culture for the people, right? So part of the things they have done is stock options, finance and retirement benefits, personal top-up market-based salaries, Netflix employee giving program. This Netflix employee giving program is saying, for instance, if you are you can take them to anywhere you want and they can support you. Employee relocation benefit. This relocation benefit is much more robust than normal benefits that other organizations have. Flexible work hours, unlimited paid time off. So this unlimited paid time off, what I was researching about, they say you can, whether you join the organization a day two or not, you can work from anywhere at any time for as long as you want. Parental leave, 4 to 4 months before childbirth. After childbirth, you have another 8 weeks after childbirth, and then after that one again, you have another option. You have optional 6 weeks. So those are unbeatable strategies. Because they say they want to entertain the world, and they are ready to entertain the world, and they are already doing that. So we also look at Google, Apple. Apple says health and wellness. They prioritize health and wellness of the employees, and that is very key to them. Vacation and time off, including new hires. Parental paid leave, 4 weeks, commuting, gym credits, stock purchase, retirement benefit, some more fun stuff, product discounts, subsidized meals, and famous, beer bash. So this famous beer bash is an event they usually have over time to unwind after some time of seriousness, like after periodically, that's what. So a lot of these strategies is what forward-thinking organizations have put in place. And somebody will not say because these people are doing the right thing. One of my friends works with, I have 2 friends, one works with Netflix, another one works with LinkedIn. And from what she shared with me about LinkedIn, it's not because they are everywhere. They might not be as rich as some organizations, but the welfare is just something else, right? So organizations just put this in place to drive their own strategy, right? So why should we improve on our organizational culture? We need to improve on our organizational culture because of lower turnover. These like benefits of positive organizational culture. When you have positive organizational culture, the cost and loss of productivity will also. We all know what lower turnover is. Seamless hiring. When you have a good culture, you'll be able to attract good candidates. Some of these organizations I've mentioned, if they drop one job vacancy today, everywhere will be flooded. Some banks in Nigeria, for instance, some of them have been looking for senior software developers for a very long time, and they've not seen. And I saw a video because we are not around. All of us have not job. It's just because they are choose to pay us well. All right. Better atmosphere. This atmosphere is very key, especially now. A very good part of our work, of our life in the workplace. So that is why the organizational climate is able to keep us. Increase in revenue. These are benefits of good culture. Higher growth, time saving, identity. Culture is employer brand, culture is management. So these are benefits of positive culture. So we're going to look at how we can. Peter Drucker did something. Peter Drucker said his work. What he tried to do was a shift to just. So what he tried to do was to just shift focus from sales-driven strategy to a more the strategy will be more people inclined. So the company strategy will be based on organizational culture. All right. And that is why everybody now talk about our people, our trucker, that management group that everybody has at one time or the other read about. Okay, so we're going to discuss how the relationship between strategy and culture. Now, look at this diagram. You see the guiding part, the driving part. The mission, the vision, the values. The mission, the vision says we want to build ITOR. We want large market share. By the end of the year, we want to do XYZ. Our strategy, what's our strategy? Our strategy is to hire the best guys. Our strategy is to coach. Our strategy is to pay a lot of money. Goals, by so time, the organization should be able to be at that level. Objectives, XY, all of that are the key things, the guiding part. Those are the things you want to achieve as an organization. But the soft part, that emotional part of the business, the moody part of the business, which is culture, needs to be aligned for all of this to be achieved. That's what this diagram is talking about. The values, the culture, the practices. So this side, the people is the driving part. The big wins, all of the strategy, the vision, the large visions, the missions, activities outlined, XYZ are the things that organization want to achieve. We're interested in result and all of these. But if you do not align all of these strategies, say the most critical element of any strategy is the translating into reality. And the only true measure of success is in the execution. And one of the key determinants of successful strategy implementation is organizational alignment with corporate culture. So that's what this thing is talking about. And that's what we're going to just explain a bit. All right. So at the end of the day, if you do not align all of that strategy to the culture is the emotional part of the business. Is the behavioral part of the business, the impression that people have, so that you will not go and, after you have made all the effort trying to get in business, after you make all the effort, implementation is very key on how all of this corporate strategy, corporate vision, corporate mission, corporate values, in the next 5 years, we should be in Ghana, in the next 5 years, we should be in so and so place, in the next 5 years, XYZ is what we need to achieve. You have left your people behind. You have left the implementers behind. You have left the ones that needs to get this job done behind. All right. So strategy is a general plan to achieve one or more long-term overall goals under conditions of uncertainty, according to Wikipedia. But if you look at it now, strategy drives focus and direction. But culture is that emotional habitat where the strategy lives and dies. Strategy says that is the headline of company story. But culture needs to clearly understand the common language that embraces, and culture also needs to tell the story. Culture needs to understand the story to be able to also tell the story. So that's the relationship here. Strategy drives intent. It has ingenuity. But culture talks about measurement. It talks about desire. It talks about engagement. It talks about execution. All right, that's what culture does. Culture drives engagement, it drives desire, it drives execution, it drives all of the measurement that is required to implement all of that. A strategy that is at odds with company's culture is doomed. And that's why they say culture trumps strategy every time. And they say that strategy eats culture for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, according to a lot of writers. So strategy brings the rules, it sets the rules and the game. Or this culture that will fuel the spirit of how the game will be played at the end of the day. Strategy brings about talking about differentiation. Strategy will say, okay, let's do it this way. But at the end of the day, the competitive advantage lies with your corporate culture. In fact, corporate culture is equal to competitive advantage. Strategy, I think I've mentioned this before. So culture is built or eroded every day. How you climb the hills defines the journey. When culture embraces strategy, execution is scalable, repeatable, and at the same time sustainable. Culture, like I just said, is competitive advantage. Culture must be monitored to understand the health the well-being, the engagement of the organization. Culture is critical for success. Taking the lead on culture. Now, so how can HR influence corporate culture? How can HR influence corporate culture? One is taking the lead on culture. Lead the culture. I mean, LIVE. HR and leadership should lead the culture. And HR needs to be able to remind leadership every time that without culture, this will not be achieved. Is another thing to come up. The year is about to end. Next year will come. Strategy meetings will start. They have forgotten culture. They have forgotten the people. They have forgotten the executionists. They have forgotten the implementers. They have gone to promise XYZ. The country manager have gone to say we are going to do XYZ. He has forgotten that he has not aligned his culture with the strategy. Align recruitment with your goals. When you are hiring executive levels, ensure that they are culture fit, because at the end of the day, you know that explanation that I shared that Yemi Fashion mentioned, that leadership, that culture is what leadership allows, what leadership look away from, and what leadership rewards. And this leadership is not just the EDs and the MDs. This leadership is at all levels. You also remember how we started when we talk about how can culture extend, or how far does culture extend? All right, talking about what is obtainable in the headquarter country. We're now also talking about what is obtainable in the impressions at the branch level, impressions at team level, impressions at various departments, all of that. So when you want to hire, align your recruitment processes with your goals. Leadership recruitment or executive recruitment is very key for strategy implementation, because at the end of the day, it is the leadership who will ensure or drive, if culture sits with leadership at the end of the day. We have said that culture is equal to management. So use strategic compensation and reward to drive culture. Strategic compensation and reward. Preach this to leadership as HR. Keep leaders on track. That's what we've been saying since. Tell them at the end of the day that, because at the end of the day, look at what happened when I also mentioned the company name because everybody had. You know the time that Dangote's HR director went to drop money for kidnappers. I think he was meant to drop 5 million. He now dropped some money less than that, and they killed him. It was HR that died. I'm sure that CFO would have said, "Oh, don't worry, can't give them that money. We agreed. Can't give them that money. They are just looking for money. They agreed." And then the HR guy who went to drop the money has died. You know, so at the end of the day, the onus will still be on us. The blame will still be on HR. So that is why HR must be able to keep leaders on track. Championing learning and development is very critical for every organization. And then HR as well, practice what you preach. Let every member of the organization practice what they preach. When you go into an organization, immediately you step into the organization like, you'll be able to say, okay, this is how the behavior or this is how the behavior from the security experience. When you open the door, from the security, the way the security greets you and how you are welcome, you'll be able to say, are they aggressive? Are they very welcoming? And all of that. Key takeaways: corporate culture refers to the beliefs and behaviors that determine how a company's employees and management interact. Corporate culture is also influenced by national culture. You know, we talked about that at the end of the day, corporate culture is like a subset of the national entity. Right. So certain things, economic trends, globalization, inflation, security, international trade, company size, products. You know, I mentioned security because what's happening currently between Russia and Ukraine would have also affected a lot of businesses. All right. Corporate culture, whether shaped internationally or grown organically, reach to the core of companies' ideology and practice and affect every aspect of that business. Corporate culture is what leadership allows. Look away from what leadership rewards. All right. Okay, so I think I've come to the end of the session. Thank you for listening. Today is Wednesday, so I know I have 2 hours window. I have 2 hours window, but I know that today is Wednesday. A lot of people also want to, so that's why I made it a bit short. Maybe some other time when we have opportunity, we can interact more. So we can go to some of the questions.
Wow, that was a very, very insightful one. Thank you so much, Kelvin. Excellent presentation. Okay, so if you have questions, you may want to bring down this slide so that we can maybe focus on the chat box. If you have any question, you can also raise your hands, or you have a contribution, a comment. Don't forget, we value your opinions. You want to share an example, have a question, have a comment, you need clarification, please do raise up your hand or send it in through the chat box. Rita Babala said that was quite a good. Thank you so much, madam. Okay. Any questions? Okay, fantastic. Bukola, you have the floor.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, everyone. So I have a quick question, and it's one that has been debatable where I work, where leadership does not want to own culture, where they feel like, oh, it should be an HR responsibility, while the leadership heads of units are running away from, handling those culture conversations. I apologize, I joined midway, where you had spoken to, HR owning some of those those culture conversations. At what point does management cascade the type of culture they would like to see, even to their own first lines, who are the leadership, who are part of the leadership? Because it's as though the leadership, who are the unit heads, are sort of waiting for something scripted to be handed over to them by management. When I say management, I'm talking about maybe the MD, right? Where leadership is waiting for management to cascade it to them, tell them this is the culture I would like to see. I don't know if my question makes sense. I just don't know where HR comes
Dr.
in.
Did you get it?
Yes.
Can you
Can you hear me?
Can you recap the question, please? I think the network is fluctuating. Kelvin didn't get you. And can you just repeat it briefly?
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. So I will just do a quick recap. So what I said is, I'm sorry I joined midway, so I didn't really capture everything you've said before now. Hopefully my question is still relevant. Now, I'm at a place where we are all talking about, okay, the kind of culture we'd like to see. Now, it's as though the leadership, who happen to be unit heads, business heads, are waiting for instance, the MD or HR to tell them what the business culture is, or what the corporate culture is, more or less like looking for it in the fine print and expecting it to be given to them to study and then now, put out there to the last man in the organization. My question is, at what point does it stop being an HR responsibility? Is HR in charge of culture, or it's actually management, or is it a joint effort between management and leadership? Or is it solely an HR responsibility to ensure that, the culture is ingrained all the way? Because when I joined, some of the first slide I saw when I joined was speaking to recruitment, L&D, and blah, blah, blah. Almost as though, okay, HR has to reflect the corporate culture, even in their own dealings, right? But for where I work, I just want to know, is it HR that is in charge of culture, or it's leadership, or it's actually a joint effort between management, the leadership unit, and HR? I hope you're able to get my question now.
Yes, very clear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my feedback would be that at the end of the day, leadership is a custodian of culture, all right? But HR is the driver. So that is why it is a joint effort, because sometimes the leadership does not know the impact of what they are allowing. So that's why somebody said here that we should send leadership to executive training. They need to see things from other people's perspective, so that by the time you are coming with a lot of changes in mind and change strategies, okay, they'll be able to, because if you don't get the buy-in of management, for instance, if you don't get the buy-in of leadership, at the end of the day, you'll be frustrated. But at the other hand, you're not just working for yourself. Whatever thing you're trying to implement or to follow is for the benefit of the organization. So what you need is for the leadership to come in terms with you. So that is why I say that culture is it's intertwined between leadership and then HR, because it sits with leadership, but you drive it. So that would be my contribution. So I don't know if Dr. Emi or someone else want to answer.
Okay, thank you so much. I can see Rita's hands up. Madam, you can unmute and speak.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Kelvin, for a wonderful presentation. This is quite clear. On the question that was asked, my own proposition would be the CEO and the leadership team drives the culture anywhere you go. But there are some organizations where culture has been allowed to foster in a negative way. Then that's when you see people, I mean, most especially leadership, trying to run away from being the proponent of culture. It's usually, it's usually the leadership and the CEO. That's why sometimes you get to hear when they use this kind of adage that what the CEO allows is what the organization becomes. But then HR personnel are usually the driver of such culture in the organization. But because, like what this person said in the, I think it's Mr. Adeosun that said, oh, CEOs should also be sent for training. Yes, some leadership tend to run away or shy away from some responsibility. And so that's why they leave HR to handle most of this issue. And that's why sometimes you find out that there's a dysfunction in the organizational setting. It's usually from top to down position, top to down notch position. That is usually in terms of the leaders allowed. We also prevent culture from being entrenched in a positive way. So in this particular case, you are using as a scenario, the HR normally should just drive it. It's like, oh, you are a driver of it. You support management, you support leadership. You're supposed to be the fuel because people will naturally want to go back to you, not to the senior executive. So that's my own. It's usually the CEO and the senior leadership that normally should take charge of culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Very, very apt and appropriate. Okay. Uludayo Babawale says, can an organization run on 2 out of the 4 types of culture mentioned in your presentation concurrently?
Okay, there's a possibility. There's a possibility, for instance, you may not have a very perfect pattern of culture. For instance, if you look at leadership style, sometimes changes as well. There will be some level of aggression when leadership is pushing for results. It doesn't mean they are aggressive in nature, but just because that task or that situation requires it. So it's possible to have both culture, but one would definitely be predominant.
Okay, thank you so much. Rita, you have more comments?
No, sorry. No, thank you. That's all.
All right, we have another question here. JIY says, is it a corporate culture for an organization to employ only a particular tribe into the organization? Kelvin?
Okay. It's not, is it a corporate culture for an organization? Any organization that wants to employ only one tribe does not have a long-term perspective. You can't set up a business and employ experts only from your tribe. All right. So if you want to set up NGO, it's okay. You want to give your tribe, free scholarship, is understandable. But for an organization that has a long-term perspective cannot be ethnic, cannot be biased, cannot be ethnic biased.
Okay, that's very, very apt. If you want to be there for the long term, let me tweak the question, Kelvin. Does culture have a role to play when I say culture now, I mean the geographic or tribal culture, the role to play in organizational culture. For example, is there a Nigerian factor that permeates many indigenous organizations?
Yes, so there are different, we say that organization is a subset of national culture, all right? For a headquarter country, for instance, we have different types of culture. Some people will say, okay, want to be ethnocentric. Sometimes they will say they want to be geocentric. So all of them have some will say our leadership has to come from the place we're operating, from the locality. And by law as well, it also depends on the law of that environment. That's why we have SLEPT analysis framework. There are some organizations that will say, no matter, as long as you are in this place, our people must be involved and our people has to be the one leading. So that company, if you want to explore the minerals of that place, of that organization, of that country, for instance, we have to be able to adjust and train indigenous people that will be able to fit in. All right. So they can have some cultural constraints, actually.
Okay, thank you so much. Our final question for today before we take your closing comments and remarks. Someone here is saying, are there any NGOs or maybe entities or institutions that can intervene where or when an organization's corporate culture has become detrimental to the employees' mental and physical well-being?
So if you look at labor law, there are labor laws and there are some advocates all around, all right? So when you consider a particular situation, there are some agencies that can support and that can provide solutions to some internal organizational issues, actually. But because your mental well-being is very important, all right? So anything that is anti-human in the organization, if you check the labor law, there are some advocates that can push up for that, and I'm sure that organization will regret it.
Also, just to add to that, you can report to the Ministry of Labor, either at federal or their state counterparts. You could also speak to human rights activists. They are typically happy to take up the situation. Now, if the person is indigent and of course can provide evidence, in Lagos, for example, there is what we call Office of the Public Defender. Office of the Public Defender. They have an office around Surulere, and there's another one, Mediation Center at Alausa, not inside the secretariat, opposite the secretariat for those living or based in Lagos. But they will support you free of charge, but they typically would like to support people who demonstrate that they don't have capacity to maybe afford a lawyer or something, but they have taken up cases that are genuine and are germane. All right. While that was going on, Loretta sent in a question, which I think we should accommodate. I suspect she has sent it earlier and we probably missed it. She said, should culture be on blueprints? In other words, should culture be written in black and white?
Like we started, we said that if you don't define culture, it will define itself. All right. So it is important that you define culture. When you define it, that's where HR has to be able to communicate it, over several times, over and over again. It's part of, because in as much as they say that culture sits with leadership, it's not leadership that will say, don't come late to work. It's not leadership that will say X, Y, Z. All right. So that's why it has to be written. Let it be written. Let it be defined. What is not documented may not be able. Somebody said, what is not documented, there's no offense if it's not documented. So write it down, actually. It will drive compliance. And over time, people will get used to it. It will no longer be a form of stress.
Fantastic. Blessing reiterated something our facilitator, Kelvin, had said earlier today. She said, cultural diversity is very important for any organization that intends to compete globally, okay? Especially in the long term. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. I'd like to sincerely thank our facilitator today. It has not been easy getting him, not because he doesn't want to be available, but because he is very, very busy. And that's why we have to choose today so that we can provide this value to everyone. I have enjoyed this session. I'm sure many more people will come back and also watch it on YouTube. Kelvin, you may wish to give your closing remarks.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Dr. Yemi, you do a whole lot, driving all of these things. I don't know how you do it, really. I don't know how you do it. So my closing remark would just be key takeaways. Let us remember that culture is the impression that we have about the organization while we are working with the organization, even before we join, and after we have left the organization. That impression is tangible and it lasts long. All right. So wherever we are, let's preach positive culture. Let's drive positive culture. That is very key for us. Even as a nation, that's what we need. We need a positive culture in all our endeavors. So that's what I would say. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And for all the participants, I thank you for your time. Thank you for the knowledge session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Okay.